Have access to a computer onto which you can install Java or Eclipse, you can still use Eclipse and Java through the RMIT myDesktop remote desktop system. So all you need is a machine that can run a browser. Now I have Chrome open here. Chrome tends to be the most compatible. That's why I'm using it. So search for RMIT and myDesktop using your favorite search engine. And here I am using DuckDuckGo. You can see the first search result. Anything similar, I'm sure it'll take you to the right spot. Search engines are fairly accurate these days. So this is the page you want to land onto first. So this is under RMIT. And what you do is you scroll all the way down and you can see the login to myDesktop link. So before you do that, of course, have a read of what it says on the page also. But assuming that you have read it, you head over to that link and it'll load up. So here we have the login screen. You need to use your student number, your S number, as your username, and you use the normal RMIT password that you use for logging on to Canvas and other services. So once you enter those, select log on. Now my username is an E number, that's why it's not a S number. Okay, so there are several ways to access Eclipse, and this one shows 3 tabs up here. It's important to note which tab you're looking at right now. So we are looking at the apps tab, but I want to show you how to open up an actual desktop within the browser window. So the favorites tab, we are not interested in that yet. We are not going to bother with that. That's just for convenience. So head over to the desktops tab, which is the middle one. And then you'll see this link. And usually there's only one of these things there. So once I click on that, it'll open up a new window. Now, some of your browsers might have pop-up blockers. And if you have something like that, it might not pop up this window like this. So just make sure that there are nothing like that blocking. So this takes a little bit of time to load, and that's how it is. I don't recommend using myDesktop on an ongoing basis, because you are connecting to a remote computer, and that never tends to be the most responsive way. It's not the most responsive experience you can have when using a computer. So this is basically how it would look if you came to RMIT and logged on to a physical machine, except in this case you don't have the actual physical machine in front of you. It's over a network. You don't need to pay attention to the balance or anything like that. So that's your print balance. Okay, so we have the Citrix receiver thing showing up, and we can already see Eclipse showing here. So that's a good sign. We would not install Eclipse because you don't have installation, you don't have the rights to install anything. So we get a lot of very expensive and very neat proprietary applications installed here. But look, I'm going to show you another way of finding things. We want to find Eclipse. So we head over to the Start menu. So this is all inside or all through the web browser, which is connected to the remote machine. So I'm using the remote machine right now. I'm not using my own computer within this window. Okay. So we want to search for Eclipse. Select the search magnifying glass and search for Eclipse. You might be presented with various errors at various points, and most of those things you can close them, and the worst that could happen is something not starting up. And if that happens, then I'll show you how to do things from there onwards. Okay, so I typed Eclipse and it's auto completing and saying Eclipse Oxygen. Now it doesn't have to be that. Just search for Eclipse, and now here it's saying the app cannot open because there's an issue with the resolution. I'm not sure why it should be a problem, but let's say that you did find Eclipse And if you chose this, now in your machine, or when you try to do this through the virtual desktop, the RMIT desktop, you might have more than one search result when you type Eclipse. In that case, just try out things until you get something to work, and remember that choice for the next time. So I'm going to choose this now, and there's a chance that this might not start up, and that sort of thing can happen. Now here it's starting up, so there's no issue there. But if it doesn't start up, there is one more way to do this. So let's let this do its thing. It takes a bit of time, as I said, and that's also the reason why I said it's not responsive as it would be on a normal computer. You might also notice this is saying June 2017 and Oxygen, and Eclipse keeps updating their releases, and they change something every few months. So it's not like there are major changes. These are minor changes, or at least you can think of these changes as not consequential to the work that you'll be doing in a subject like Introduction to Programming. Okay, so I have Eclipse open, and it's basically, this is how Eclipse would look if you had installed it on your own computer. All right, so we have the welcome screen, which we can get rid of, and I recommend that you do. Right, so close that. And then you have these things. So I'm not going to show you how to use Eclipse here itself, because there are other instructions. If you're doing Introduction to Programming, please have a look at the Canvas or the study materials where it shows you how to use Eclipse. But before I conclude this, I want to show you one little important thing that's kind of unique or specific to this myDesktop. That is how you organize your Workspace folder. Now, the Workspace folder is the place where your Java files will be stored. So it's a good idea that you know where this is, because you need to submit them, right? So if you weren't presented with a small dialog box like this right at the start, or when you ran Eclipse for the first time, you can access this as I just did now. Head over to the File menu, scroll all the way down to Switch Workspace, and here it is, and then select Other. Okay, so this is how you tell the computer where to store things. Now, the reason why I'm doing this is because this is a remote machine. You don't want to store everything in C:// Scratch, because as the name suggests, that's not going to be there forever. That's just a temporary working space. Where you want to store your documents, if you're an RMIT student using myDesktop, is in your H drive. The H stands for the home drive. That's why they chose H. You can see a lot of other drives available, but choose the H drive and then create a new folder. So remember to create a new folder, not just to say H drive and say OK. All right, so make new folder and give it a name. So if you're doing CPT 120 2018 study period 4, for example, all right, so you would hit enter and choose that. There it is. So choose that and say OK. Now make sure that your workspace is showing something like this. It should not be your desktop just by itself. You should create a folder. Okay, so if you're using, again, this is really important if you're doing this through the remote desktop system, because you need to make sure that your files will be there the next time you come back. Okay, so that's so create something similar and say launch. So don't create it in any other drives. So what will happen now is it's going to reset the workspace, and it's going to restart everything. I am not sure if I mentioned, but if you don't have all of these icons on your desktop, don't worry about it. That's just, it remembers what you put on your desktop. So even if you create a workspace on your desktop, it should be fine. But we always recommend students to use the H drive because it's easier to refer to as well when you're writing the path. Okay, so we are still waiting for this thing to start up. And even if you ran this on your own machine, it's going to take a bit of time to start up. So once this thing loads up, you will be able to follow the standard exercises for Eclipse. So you can see the title of the window itself is showing that folder or directory that you typed up earlier. So as I said earlier, you can close this, and in fact, if you can go down, oh no, it's actually kind of hidden here, you can get rid of that so it doesn't show the welcome. So when you create a new project, which is what you would do to create a Java program, so you might say Java project and then say next and give it a project name, testing things, right? Let's call it that. So you need to create a new project for every different program that you write, at least at this stage. So don't worry about the exact settings. If I don't tell you to change something, it means you should leave it alone, even if your things are showing a little bit different. But generally, except for version numbers and little things like that, there's not going to be many differences. So at this point, remember to select finish. Okay, so don't say next, say finish. And if it tells you something like this kind of project is associated with the Java perspective, it's asking you whether you want to keep working in Java, because Eclipse is flexible. So say yes, open perspective. You can even say remember my decision, then it won't ask you again. So it's not an issue, nothing serious. So this folder would have now been created inside. So let's try to find Explorer, which is what, not Internet Explorer, the Windows Explorer, which is the file manager. All right, so here I can see all of my drives. And if you remember, I created my workspace in my H drive. Somewhere here is my workspace folder, and that's up here in the title is the name of that. So I'll go there, and here we go. So testing things, if you remember, that's the project that I just created. So when it comes time to creating your programs, you would create your Java program the normal way. So I just right-clicked on this, and then you say new class. Let's just call this one test. Remember to keep the package field empty, as we do in Introduction to Programming, at least, and then say finish. And if we now switch back to that, we would be able to see inside the src folder, there's a file called test.java. So depending on the submission that you're doing, it's, well, most likely you will need to submit a .java file. So if the submission instructions asked you to submit a Java file of your program, it would be located inside the src folder, which is inside the project folder, and the project folder is inside the workspace folder. So a few different terminologies, I guess, terms. And but you get used to it. You don't have too many different things, and the great thing is it's always the same thing every time you do it, and you get used to it very quickly. So this file is sitting inside the remote machine. So if you are trying to submit, if you have Canvas open on your own computer, or the one that you're actually in front of, and if you want to submit something, you can't locate this file that way. So you need to use a browser from within the virtual desktop. So I just open up Chrome, which is installed in the virtual desktop itself, and then you would go to Canvas the normal way. So you would go to RMIT And so this is, yeah, and then you go to students and you go to Canvas, and then from Canvas, when you try to browse and upload something, you can navigate to the H drive workspace that you created, and then the project and the src folder which will have your Java files. So to repeat that last step, to recap, when you need to submit files that you have created using Eclipse under myDesktop, you need to open the browser from myDesktop as well. Okay, so the myDesktop browser is going to look at the files that you have in that remote machine. If you have Canvas open on your own machine, don't get confused if you can't find the H drive. And even if you have a H drive, it's not going to have the same file. So that's a little thing that you have to be mindful of. To finish things up, there's one more step. You need to treat this session or this remote connection as a machine that's in front of you. That's your own. A machine that is your own. In other words, you won't just pull the plug on it. You need to close it down properly, and that's not because it's what's nice. That's a different matter. But if you don't sign out or log off this machine, it might keep the session active in the background, and when you come back to log in again, it might cause issues. Now, this is something that I have been told by RMIT IT Services itself. So now this is the old tab that we had, and it just vanished because I opened up the desktop in a new tab, if you remember. So again, from here, you should log off. Okay, so you would use this approach of accessing the remote desktop to use Eclipse only if you can't have Eclipse or Java installed on your own machine. If by chance you can't get Eclipse to work or open through the myDesktop, which can happen depending on various configurations. Sometimes students make changes and inadvertently end up in a bit of a situation. What you can do is remember this other tab, the third one. We said we are not interested in favorites, but we looked at desktops. And then if you go under apps, you should be able to see Eclipse here again. So this version tends to work a bit more reliably than the one that you see through the full virtual desktop. But again, you face the same issue. So the difference is face the same issue when it comes to submitting the file, because this file, the files that you create, will be on the RMIT network. So you might have to go through the desktop again to submit, unless you have Chrome over here, which might allow you to. So you'll need to go to Canvas through that, and yeah, I don't think it likes Chrome through that. So you'll, when it comes to submitting again, you still need to go through the desktop. But here we go. We have Eclipse. Oh, wait a bit. So Chrome is open here. That's a good sign. So this is what I had created earlier, except I came to Eclipse through the Apps tab, and there's just two different ways of approaching the same thing. Now I might be able to, so yeah, it might be possible to attach the file from here when you're submitting through Canvas. So go to RMIT students and log in the way you normally do, but do it through this remote version of Chrome that's inside your own computer's Chrome, and then you should be fine. All right, so that's the end of this demonstration.